In this video, we're going to take a look at the SQL Server 2012 Management Studio. We'll learn how to navigate the Management Studio, create database diagrams and view table relationships, and write and execute some very simple queries. We'll open the Management Studio by going to our Windows Start menu, All Programs, selecting Microsoft SQL Server 2012, then SQL Server Management Studio. This is what SQL Server Management Studio looks like. Notice you have the Object Explorer, which is this pane over here on the left side, where you'll see all your databases, and you can drill down into them. For example, I've expanded my XYZ medical DBF database here, and you'll see that my database diagrams, tables, views, etc. are listed for that database. You can right-click on almost any item in the Object Explorer to get different options of actions that can be done on that object. And which options you get is going to depend on what kind of object you're looking at. For example, if we expand our tables and we right-click on one of our tables, so let's right-click on the appointment table, we have several options here. We can create a new table, we can click on Design, which will show us the structure of this table, and you can see what the primary key is. It's got this little key next to it. The data types of the table are nulls allowed, etc. Back over here, we can select the top 1,000 rows of the table, and you'll see that down here you can view dependencies, you can rename, delete, refresh, you can even edit the top 200 rows if you prefer to do it this way. If we select the edit top 200 rows option, we can delete rows, so we just click on the row we wanted to delete and then select delete. I'm not going to do that right now. We can go down to the bottom and enter a new row here by just typing in our values for the fields. We can modify existing records by clicking in the field we want to change and type in the new value. I would prefer to do all those things using SQL, but you do have this option if you want to use it. So remember that you can get a lot of options just by right-clicking on objects in Object Explorer. From a table, you can expand columns and you'll see all the columns in that table. You can actually right-click and modify from there if you want to make changes. You can just right-click on a column like I did and select Modify. From this design view, you can even right-click on a column and select Properties, and you'll see many items down at the bottom describing that column, as well as the properties for the table in the Properties pane over here on the right side. If you have a large database and you're looking for a specific object, you can filter using the Filter button. So this is not a large database, but I'll show you how to do this anyway. Same looking for the appointment table. I can select Tables and go up and click on the Filter button. And I'm going to tell it I want to filter for objects where the name of the object contains APP. I don't have to type the whole thing. And then click on OK. And now I can see that my tables are filtered. The word filtered appears there by tables. And if I expand that now, it's already expanded, I can see only the appointment table. To remove the filter, I can just go back up, click on filter again, click on clear filter, and OK. And now I see all my tables for this database again. Also note the refresh button immediately to the right of the filter button. It's helpful if, for example, you've just created a table using a SQL statement and your new table doesn't appear in the Object Explorer list yet. you can just select the database you want to refresh and click on that refresh button to refresh the database, and then you should be able to see your new table. For both the Object Explorer and the Properties pane, which appears on the right side of the screen, you have some options. You can close these panes by clicking on the X. And if you've closed the panes and you want to get them back again, you just go up here, click on the View menu at the top, and then select Object Explorer to open the Object Explorer. Click on Properties window to open the Properties window. You can auto-hide or unpin either of the panes by just clicking this pin icon, and if you do that, you'll have this little button that you can roll over to view the pane temporarily. If you want to repin the pane or turn off auto-hide, you just go back, roll over, and click on the pin again. The middle area of the screen is where your new queries and SQL files will open. To create a new query, you can just go up here and click on the New Query button. And you can type your query into the new query window that appears. So let's type a very simple query. Select asterisk from person. And you can either hit the F5 key or you can click the Execute button up here to run your query. Once you have an open query window, you'll see this little drop-down menu at the top that indicates what database you're in currently. So before running a query, you should always check up there and make sure you've selected the database that you want to query from in that drop-down menu. And I'm querying from the XYZ Medical DBF database. If your query generates errors, so let's make an error in our query on purpose. We'll take out the asterisk and we'll run the query. Your error message will display down here in this Messages tab at the bottom of the screen. You'll get experience interpreting and fixing errors as you work through this course. And of course, when you're satisfied with your query, so let's fix it back so that it's correct and run it. Then you can save the query just like you'd save any file in Windows. Go to File and Save. Go where you want to save it. And you can name it whatever you want. And notice that the default file extension is .sql. It's going to save this as a .sql file. If you have a saved query you'd like to open, you can just go to File, Open, File, select your file. I'm going to actually select both of these files and click Open. And it opens them here. And just like before, you run these queries by clicking the Execute button. If you want, you can grab these tabs and move your work out into a separate window, like this. This might be helpful if you want to view two queries or database diagrams side by side. To put the window back in here is a little tricky. When you click on the title bar of this menu, click and hold the mouse button down, then start to move the window, you'll see this little cross-shaped menu. In this menu, the yellow indicates where the window will go when you release the mouse button. So you can put it back in the main window as a tab. You can put it on the side, the bottom, the top, wherever the screen turns blue, that's where your window is going to go when you put it back in. So I want to put it back here in the middle, like this. You can change the order of your tabs up here by just dragging them side to side, like this. You can also right-click on each tab, and you have some options there like save, close all but this, etc. You can start a tab group. So for example, you could select new vertical tab group here, and that would separate this tab out so you're viewing it separately but still on the main window. And you can do that again so you can see all three tabs at once. And when you want to put them back, you just put them back like we did before when we pulled out that window. Put them back there. You can also create horizontal tab groups. That's one of the options here. If you have multiple queries open and you're unable to find the tab for the one you want, you can click this little down arrow at the top right of the query area to get a list of all the open queries, and then just select the one you want to look at. So let's take a closer look at this select statement we wrote a little while ago. Select star from person, select asterisk from person. This is a very simple query. The asterisk indicates that we want to select all the columns from the table person, and we're not specifying any other clauses like a where clause or an order by clause. So we're going to select all the rows from the table person, all the columns and the rows. After running this query, you can scroll up and down, side to side to see the results of that query. Let's make a quick change to this query. So instead of using the asterisk, we're going to specify a couple of columns. So let's say we just want to select person last name and person first name from person. That means we're only going to select those two columns now instead of all of the columns. And we want to order by person last name and person first name. So I've on purpose made an error here, and I'll let you see if you can figure out what it is. The error says invalid column name person underscore first name. So if I still can't figure out why that's not a valid column name, I can go over here, look in my tables, look in the person table, and expand my columns because my error is talking about columns, right? And let's look at person first name and person underscore first underscore name. We left out the underscore. So we just put that in, and now we should be able to run the query. So the results of this query, we get the person last and first name from the person table, and we're ordering it by the last name and the first name. So it's in alphabetical order by last and then first. Now let's take a look at some database diagrams. So I'm going to close these out. You can find database diagrams under each database listed right at the top. The first time you expand database diagrams, you're going to get a message that says this database does not have one or more of the support objects required to use database diagramming. Do you wish to create them? And you'll just click on yes. And I've already done that here. And now you can right click on database diagrams and choose new database diagram, and you'll be able to choose which tables you want to include in your diagram. So from this add table window, I'm going to select all of the tables by clicking the top one, and then I held down the shift key and selected all of those, and then I'll click on add. So here's my diagram for this entire database. I can see which fields are keys, they have the key next to them, and I can see what kind of relationships the tables have with each other. So for example, I can see that the position table over here is related to the staff table, and that's a one-to-many relationship. The infinity sign indicating the many side of the relationship. What this doesn't show is exactly which fields are related. I know position ID is the key in the position table, the primary key, because it has the key next to it. But if I move this table around, see the relationship is not anchored, so you can't really see which fields are related to which fields. Just from looking at this relationship, I would assume the position ID key field in the position table is related to the staff position code in the staff table, but I can't know that for sure just from looking at this. To know for sure, I can right-click on this line that indicates the relationship, click Properties, and then if I click on the Tables and Column Specification and this little dot 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 button, then I'll get this little window that tells me the relationship name, and I can see that yes, staff position code in the staff table is a foreign key for position ID in the position table. In practical terms, this means a staff member can't have a position that's not in the position table. If you try to insert a record into the staff table using some position that wasn't defined in the position table, you'd get an error. So database diagrams can be helpful if you like to see the tables in your database laid out visually. You might want to take a look at the database diagram before writing a query, especially if you're new to the database, unfamiliar with the database, and need to find out what kind of data you're working with and how it's structured. There are a lot of different things you can do with the Management Studio, and I certainly didn't cover all of them here. So if you ever want to search the online help, there are several options under the Help menu. The View Help option will take you to Microsoft SQL Server help website, and you can do a search on whatever you need help with. For example, I'm going to type in Object Explorer. And I get some results there.